I was at the Google Pixel 3 launch, well, at the London satellite event, and I was blown away by how good at least one of the phones was. This is, of course, a diss of the larger Pixel 3 XL with a 6.3-inch QHD display, but with, well, plenty of people heard me coin this.
I saw a tweet yesterday quoting Steve Litchfield, the legend, who apparently has a new name for this, and I don't know if you guys have heard it before. It's no longer a notch on this phone. It is, in fact, a bucket.
Yep, the Pixel 3 XL is the ugliest phone of the year without a shadow of a doubt. The bucket just can't be ignored. It's hoped that Google will allow the blackening of the ears and then just maybe I can overlook the bucket. In the meantime, Google's work in imaging, up to 15 separate frames, are now combined in every HDR Plus photo, including taking the perfect shot before you press the shutter icon, an outrageous night mode, high-res zoom without a telephoto lens, and more, all impressed in theory, though a lot of it isn't actually available yet. A coated glass back means that Qi charging is back, which is good, and Google still ships the Pixels with the 3.5mm DAC stroke dongle that headphone fans like myself need. The smaller Pixel 3 is the one to get. It's pretty, it's the perfect size, it's symmetrical, and aside from a 1080p screen, it has the same internals as the XL, Snapdragon 845 and 4GB of RAM. Decent enough in Google's hands. I'll have a full review in the next phone show. Now, somehow the Samsung Galaxy Note 9 slipped my review procedures a couple of months ago, so this is somewhat belated. But I'm putting that right now with the benefit of both hindsight and several software updates improving camera results and also fixing little niggles like the Bixby button, which you can now set not to launch the infamous Samsung Assistant when the button is pressed by accident. Now, don't worry, I'm not going to cover the Galaxy Note 9 from A to Z in a lengthy video, since 90% of it is effectively identical to my beloved Galaxy S9 Plus that I've mentioned many times and which normally shoots this very phone show. It's been replaced here for one show only, returning the Nokia 808. I'll concentrate here on what's different and unique. In the hand, the Note 9 is bigger than the S9 Plus, a couple of millimeters in width and height, and 12 grams heavier at 201 grams, but the payoffs are in the larger 6.4-inch screen versus 6.2 in the S9 Plus, both notchless, note Apple, Google and others, and in the unique presence of a silo for the included super capacitive S Pen, of which more in a moment. Despite the stylus silo, Samsung has squeezed in a bigger battery at 4,000 mAh compared to 3,500 on the S9 Plus. But all the other hardware is identical, 128GB storage, 6GB of RAM, though the crazily priced half a terabyte model with 8GB of RAM does exist. Exynos 9810 dual aperture main camera plus 2x telephoto lens, USB Type-C data and charging ports with fast chargers in the box, and yes, of course, there's a 3.5mm audio jack. So useful, and not just for listening to music via headphones. In fact, the camera is not quite identical, since Samsung has been experimenting with, quote, Scene Optimizer, effectively the company's AI camera mode. As you'd expect, it auto-recognises what you're shooting and applies some optimizations. See the example shots here snapped on the S9 Plus, which doesn't have the Scene Optimizer, and the Note 9, which does. The latter does seem to sometimes pull out purer and less artificial images, and I can't see why Samsung wouldn't roll out these new camera algorithms to the S9 range in due course. One can't complain overall. Factor in the telephoto lens, and the Samsung flagships are right up there with the iPhone XS and Pixel 3 ranges, even if I personally still think there's too much sharpening going on at the Pixel level. Oh well, I can't hanker after the Lumia 950 XL camera's purity forever. This is 2018 and one has to live with what we've got. The stereo speakers, though with the bottom one providing all the bass, are in theory the same components as the S9 Pluses, but I could tell a difference. There was a fuller sound and more bass from the Note 9. I'm putting this down to slightly increased space inside for bass reflex. Here's a demo. Quite a sumptuous stereo experience, really. Bit of Steve Winwood and Eric Clapton. About 15 minutes long. The delta is small between the two handsets though, which means it's really all about that stylus. And I have to start with a negative observation because it's about getting the Note 9 stylus out. Heck, this applies to the Note 8 as well. On the naked phones, as here, it's fine. Well, kind of. The rounded stylus end protrudes very slightly from the phone's bottom, and so you can easily find it sight unseen. You press it in and pop the stylus out. However, the all-glass Note 9 is by definition much more fragile than, say, the classic all-plastic Note 4, meaning that you can't just use it as is most of the time. You'll have it in a TPU-style case like this. At the very least, this one's wafer thin, but provides extra grip and a little protection as well. And yet, even with this very thin layer, it's enough to make getting the S Pen out tricky. You have to really, really press your finger or thumb tip in, almost painfully so, or else use a fingernail and trial and error. And again, this is all with a case on. It's inconvenient enough that a case Note 9 won't have its S Pen extracted as often as with the naked phone, which is a shame. Maybe I just haven't found a case yet with a large enough bottom cutout. Even my beloved Spigen Armor cases don't make getting the S Pen out very easy. So in practice, if you're not using the stylus much, then you might as well have the cheaper, smaller and simpler S9 Plus. But the S Pen stylus, which is recharged every time it's docked, does at least offer some functions to make getting it out worthwhile, assuming that these appeal to you. For example, being able to launch the phone's camera with a long press and then take a photo is a neat trick that could be useful for selfies at events. You still kind of have to have a tripod or an easy place to rest the phone so that you can take it from a few meters away. So I suspect real world use will be slightly limited. The biggest USP for the stylus is the range of things that can be done with screen captures. You get to pick the area of display to grab, whether to annotate it, extract copyable text, even translate it, all with a tap of the stylus. And this goes way beyond what any other phone can do, even the iPhone. So if you're into manipulating, editing and sharing text, then the Note 9 is the only game in town. Plus, you can do the usual scribbles and quick notes, even with the screen nominally off and in always-on display mode. Are these abilities enough to warrant the extra few £100 or euros over the S9 Plus? Well, maybe, but also maybe not. It depends just how far you want to go with your smartphone, how productive you need to be. The Note 9 is absolutely the most feature-packed smartphone in the world, bar none. But if you don't need the S Pen's features, then get the Galaxy S9 Plus. And if you don't need the S9 Plus's telephoto lens and extra RAM, then get the standard S9. It's a sliding scale, but these are all close family members, of course.